Welcome back, friends, to the shop. So the Christmas season is upon us, and something that I have done, I think I've done this several times. I don't know that I've ever shared this particular story on my main channel. I think it's primarily been on live streams and broadcasts and all that. But it's a good story, and it was really encouraging to me. And it might be something. It might be something that you enjoy. Maybe something that will provoke some thought, as it has for me for going on 2 decades now. So now, before we get into this, of course, we all know, or most of us know, that Christmas is not, December 25th is not when Christ was really born. So I know there's a lot of folks that may be a shock to you. That's not particularly the case. If you go back and look into history a little bit, you'll find that times and dates were changed to make it, there's a lot of different schools of thoughts on this, but basically to make the Christian religion a little bit more palatable for the pagans that were being brought into this new faith, incorporating a little bit of theirs with a little bit of ours, and we have this kind of this convoluted, disjointed thing that confuses a lot of folks. It's easy to get to the bottom of it, the truth, if you want to spend the time to study and look into it, but I want to put that out there. I'm not ignorant to these facts. I want to talk a little about miracles today. Do miracles happen? Have you ever had a miracle happen to you? I personally have. And the miracle that happened to me manifested itself in being visited by, well, for lack of a better word, by an angel. I know. This is too much for most people, but it's true, and it happened to me. Now, with that being said, before I share the story with you, miracles are not what you want to build a faith on, because just because someone says something, just because I'm about to tell you this story, something that happened to me that was really important, what does that do for you? How does that help you in any way? Can you verify that it happened? Can I prove to you that these things took place, or do you just have to take my word upon it? You see, that's the problem with miracles. A lot of really immature people of faith, a lot of immature Christians just will spend their whole life begging for, Lord, if I could just see a miracle, that would strengthen my faith through the rest of my life. But they don't. I'm not saying they don't happen, and I'm not saying that they haven't happened to you. What I'm saying is that if you experience a miracle, if that is visited upon you, that's for you. That's for you for reasons that none of us can explain. And if you decide to keep that to yourself your whole life, you're probably better off. What you need is faith. You need, when you're building a faith, when you're building a foundation, you need to have what I call a three-legged stool. If you build your faith and your belief system off of one key text or one particular thing or one miracle, then you're on shaky ground. Just try to imagine sitting on a stool with one leg. It's on the proof of evidence that we build faith. And that's why we have the 66 books. We can, if we hear something from someone or we have been told something by our parents and grandparents, we can go back in there and verify many different areas. That's why we have the 4 Gospels, because the 4 Gospels are 4 eyewitness experiences of the same thing. So there's many things in history that we look at, that we hear, that we just take as fact based off of one person's writing, one witness, and we just automatically take that as fact. That's why it's so important that we have the 4 Gospels and 4 different accounts and to verify this in the proof of evidence. That's where safety is. So with all that out of the way, I'll share with you my story. It's not that long. It was in just outside of Oregon, just outside of Portland. I was going into my favorite German restaurant, and still is to this day, Gustav's in Clackamas, Oregon. Whenever we're in town, Mrs. W and I, we always go there, and they have the best schnitzel, even better schnitzel than they have in and Spätzle in Germany. I don't know. It's really good. Anyway, so I had pulled in there. I was going in there for lunch, and I pulled into the parking spot. And I got out, and I was putting my keys in my pocket, and a man approached me. He was probably in his mid-30s or so, just an average guy, blue collar, just a working guy. He didn't look like a homeless guy. Just a common guy, just a normal guy, right? Had his hat in his hand, and he told me a story. He told me about how his I think it was his 13 or 14-year-old daughter had got mixed up with some folks or with a boy and had ran away from home. Well, I don't know all the details, but apparently she had been gone for some time. They were just worried sick about her. They didn't know where she had went. They hadn't heard from her. This is before cell phones, you know, all that stuff. And finally, after a week or so, she had gotten in contact with him, and she was several hundred miles away, and she was in trouble. She had been abandoned, she had been used, and she was in a dangerous situation. So him, being her father, and there were 3 other little kids there, and his wife, he had immediately packed up everything he had, and they in their car, and they came to find their daughter, which they had. As he's talking to me, he's pointing out, he's telling me the story, and he's pointing over there to his car, and I can see, you know, he's in kind of a beat-up old car, and indeed his family's there. And, you know, you just kind of know when someone's telling you the truth. I think most of us, I mean, there are some really good actors out there, and there are some people that can deceive even the best of us, but you know truth when you hear it. It has a particular ring to it. And this was what I was hearing from him was truth. He wasn't a bum. He wasn't just some lowlife coming up and trying to shake me down for money. This was a guy that was in trouble. And the trouble that he had was they didn't have a lot of money, and they had a beat up old car. They didn't have enough gas money to get home, and they were kind of stuck there. And he was doing what he had to do, right? Well, I didn't have very much on me. I mean, I think I had like $40 or something on me like that. And I gave him the $40. And this was before I was a Christian. Because it was just something about him. And I saw his kids and all that, and I wished I'd had more. But that's what I had, and I didn't think too much of it. He thanked me, and I gave him the money, and he turned and started walking back to his car, which was, I don't know, maybe 100 feet away at the end of the parking lot. I took no more than 2 or 3 steps towards the restaurant, and just something about this whole thing was just weird to me. It just didn't feel right. I stopped after taking no more than 3 steps. I mean, just seconds ago, I had just talked to the man and saw his family. And I turn around, and there's nobody there. There's no car, there's no kids, there's no guy, there's no nothing. There was no time. There was no time for him to leave, no time for him to drive away. And I stood there, just, I couldn't believe it. You know, I kept looking around like, am I losing my mind? Am I going crazy? And then just a calmness, a feeling of peace came upon me. And I realized at that moment that I had just experienced a miracle, that I had been tested in some way. And it confused me for a long time, and I never really understood it because I hadn't, you know, I was far from Christ at that time in my life. And then, you know, a few years later, after I met Mrs. W. and started getting into and getting closer to God, it dawned on me what this was, that this was maybe some sort of a test. What was it for me? You know, why did God see the need to give me this experience? And I can tell you what it is now. I understand it so clearly now. My dad was a hardworking guy. My granddad was a hardworking guy. You know, I didn't grow up in a family that made excuses. We had been, you know, we'd worked for everything. And when I was very judgmental about folks that were unwilling to do that, I just kind of wrongly assumed that everyone had the same abilities, capabilities, the intellect that I had, the drive, the ambition, the talents to go out and to make a living and start businesses and do these things. Just kind of assumed anyone who wasn't doing what I was doing was a bum, was just lazy and a slacker and didn't want to work and was just basically taking advantage of the system and the rest of us. And what I realize now that I didn't, and I think why that was so important for me to have this experience, was to soften my heart in that area. Because after I realized that, and after I realized that and here's what it is. There's a scripture that says, Be careful how, make sure that you entertain, I'm paraphrasing here, but make sure you entertain strangers, because many have entertained strangers that unwillingly, that didn't realize it, had been sent, had been messengers of God for whatever reason, to test them. I don't know. We don't know. We see through a glass dimly now. But that was a test to me, or just something to show me not to be so judgmental, and to be more careful, and to realize, if not for all of the incredible gifts that I had been given, and talents and abilities and intellect, those are not things that I acquired on my own. Those were things that I was gifted by the Creator. And for me to take a haughty spirit, or to think myself to be better than other folks that were not gifted with those things, was the height of arrogance. And so that for me was a real turning point. And it took a long time, and of course I certainly haven't arrived yet, but it has helped me when I want to fall back into those judgmental states of mind, that comes back to me to remind me to be very careful. Be careful who you're talking about, who you're about to condemn or to gossip about, because it very well may be a messenger of God. It very well things may not be exactly how you think they are, and so we need to be careful and not to miss those opportunities. I'll close with this. One thing that was really kind of haunted me about this whole experience after that was I wondered, and I wonder still to this day, how many times that when I have been maybe short of patience, or just so consumed in my own life and my own thoughts and all the things I have going on, how many times have I missed opportunities in life that God maybe has sent me because I was so self-absorbed and so wrapped up in my own things and unable to see the needs of others around me. So, yeah, that's my story. And again, believe it or don't believe it, it makes no difference to me. I can tell you that I was there, and it did happen. It happened exactly how I've told you. And hopefully that will be an encouragement to you. Share your stories if you've had similar things like that. But also, when you hear these miracle stories like this, take them with a grain of salt. If they are in alignment with what you've read and what you can prove and verify in the Scriptures, then there may be some benefit to it. But always test them, because there's been a lot of evil men that have led folks astray, even to their own deaths, by claiming to have a message from God, or claiming to be a prophet, or claiming to have had divine inspiration when they were lying and they were deceiving. So don't forget that the devil can perform miracles as well, and he's we're caught in the battle between good and evil, and we have to make sure that we're always testing all of these things, all of these experiences with what has been given to us in the Scriptures. So have a Merry Christmas. May God bless you and your families. Have a great Sabbath, and we'll see you guys on the next video.